this is a quick analysis of the piece Boris the Bard. Boris the Bard was written as an arrangement of the piece Boris the Pirate. This is a Year 11 Music Advanced assignment where students are given a piece called Boris the Pirate, which is a kind of sea shanty style folk song. And the student's job is to arrange Boris the Pirate into any number of chosen genres or styles or fusions of styles. And so what I've done to demonstrate this for the students, and hopefully it's you watching, hello, what I've done is I've written a few Boris variations, some of my own arrangements of Boris the Pirate. And this one is called Boris the Bard. And so Boris the Bard is a medieval folk style version of Boris the Pirate. Now, with medieval music, a real expert of medieval music will know not only which specific era or set of years or period of time that a folk song came from, but they'll also pay attention to things like which country or which region did these folk songs come from. I have done no such thing. I have completely stereotyped the medieval music folk sound, and I've taken my inspiration from essentially popular media, TV and films, cartoons and the like. Anytime a character goes to a medieval place, I've obviously listened to the sounds that they evoke, and that's become for me the sound that triggers medieval sounds and periods in my brain. So I've tried to emulate that here without too much thought. So that is not a good thing. I just want to say that's not a good thing to have done. It doesn't make me a particularly rigorous composer or an effective composer or anything like that. What I really recommend for you is that when you do your arrangements, you become an expert of that genre before you start jumping in. The example I always give is someone says, I want to do a jazz arrangement of a particular piece. I want to do Boris in the jazz club or something. Well, what era of jazz are you talking about? That word doesn't mean anything specifically when you are trying to do an arrangement, because is it bebop? Is it swing? Is it free jazz? Is it jazz fusion? And those genres have so many differences. So that's what I want for the students, is to really become the expert of your genre before you jump in. Having said that, I have not done any of those things. I have made my generic medieval Boris the Bard. But it does work musically. I think it is effective as a piece of music, regardless of its sort of anti-historical conception. And it works for a few reasons. Number one, there's appropriate instrumentation for the era or genre or style I'm trying to capture. Having said all of that, I have used medieval instruments. I've used the medieval recorder. You can have a listen to it here quickly. And I've used the medieval lute. And when those things are put together, I think effectively the medieval era is evoked, even if it's a sort of pastiche of that. Another appropriate instrument I've used is kind of a very kind of textured tambourine sound. You can hear it here. And then that lower instrument, that is like a tom drum. And when you put some reverb on it, it's kind of has a almost Celtic kind of feel to it. Certainly a European folk kind of feel to it. And I think that combined with the medieval recorder and the medieval lute evokes that sound enough that I think we plausibly can feel, yeah, that's medieval. Even if if we traveled back in time, it wouldn't actually sound anything like it. Number two, ensemble roles are switched. So at the beginning, the recorder takes the melody, but later the lute takes the melody. So there's a switching of ensemble roles, and that just provides interest for the listener. Number 3, the harmony and the melody stay intact from the original, because we don't want to vary from the original too much to the point that it sounds like a brand new piece of music. But there has been quite a significant change. We've moved from 4/4 into 3/4. There is a time signature change, and that does mean that the melody has been altered rhythmically to fit this new meter. So if you reflect on the original version of Boris that the students watching this will be familiar with, they'll notice that the melody of the rhythm of the melody has been changed a little bit. There's been a use of rubato and tempo changes for drama, and you can actually see that there is a tempo change up here in the tempo track. But also at the beginning, I am playing in a rubato fashion. I'm not actually playing in time with the metronome. That comes in later. So at the beginning, there's a bit of call and response between the lute and the recorder. Yeah, that's that. Oops, sorry, I've opened the wrong window. And yes, and then finally, there is a humorous middle section. It's not particularly musically appropriate, but hopefully it makes it enjoyable. So I don't necessarily recommend making a kind of a gag or a joke in the middle of your arrangement. That often doesn't work and distracts from the good composing and arranging that you do. But there is a reason why there's this humorous section. So just to talk about it quickly, in the middle of the song, we venture from the medieval period into kind of the 1960s and 70s, and I've made this section that is a little bit reminiscent of the band Led Zeppelin. And the reason for that is quite simple. When I switched the ensemble roles and I recorded harmony on a little recorder trio, I realized very immediately, as I'm sure you have, that sounds a lot like Stairway to Heaven, where they've used recorders as well. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to commit to this accident that I stumbled across, and I'm going to actually venture through into the 70s, and I'm going to do a little Led Zeppelin section, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I think it does contribute to making the piece work and making it enjoyable for the listener. Again, I don't really recommend doing it for an assessment piece, but it is a great skill to have, to be able to sort of change genres like that. And you see that a lot in film music and in TV show music, where these things do happen and we jump from style to style, and it's not a bad skill to be able to pull off. So if we look through the piece at the beginning, just quickly of what works, the lute. Now this is not you can see this is actually a MIDI recorded lute. So I've played this in with a keyboard. And all I've done is that as I have struck the chords, I have started from the lowest note, and I have broken the chord up, or kind of what we, as a piano player, you'd call ripping the chord. I've ripped the chord from bottom to top. You can hear that as the chord is struck, even those much closer chords, not the arpeggio, but the closer chord, you can hear that I'm not playing every note at once. That replicates strumming, where on a guitar, at least, the lower pitched notes are closer to the guitarist. They sit higher on the guitar, or up on the upper part of the guitar, and the higher pitched strings are in the lower part. So as you strum down, you strum from low to high. And that's why when you hear that, it probably, in my opinion, it's a relatively accurate copy of the way that a guitar might play a chord voicing. The other thing I've tried to do is actually voice the chords a little bit like the way that a guitar does. So I actually don't know how a lute is tuned, and I'm sure it's not tuned the way that a guitar is done. So any serious medieval scholars will listen to this and be very angry. But the way that a guitar is tuned is such that when you play chords, often there is a fifth at the bottom of the chord, followed by a third, and then followed by other supplementary notes within the chord. So the lower register notes of the chord are a fifth. You wouldn't really play a first, third, and fifth on a guitar unless you're doing a very, very specific voicing. So that's why I've tried to voice those chords to sound kind of realistic. There is the only really we've gone through the melody of Boris and the chords of Boris happen very similar to the original through here. There's one little factor I just want to draw attention to, which is that I did a bit of a trill at the end. Adds a bit of drama and seems era appropriate to have this kind of trill, kind of a proto-classical trill. And there is a little foreshadowing of the percussion with this little rubato percussion fill. It's kind of a nice little touch. So I'll just play from around here. Actually, I'll go back a tiny bit. There's the trill and then a bit of percussion. Okay, so we have essentially A section, tiny little trill interlude in the middle, relatively effective. Now, as we move into the B section of the piece, the ensemble begins to play in time, and the tempo is being brought by the duo of the tom drum and the tambourine. Okay, and then this tempo is retained for the last A. So we've had A, B, A, but now the final A has got a driving rhythm brought to us by this percussion section. So now we hear the final A. Great. So A, B, A, it's working pretty well. And so as we hit this next section, this would be the end of Boris the Pirate, the sheet music that the students are given. I'm going to repeat all of that again, but now the ensemble roles are going to switch. So the recorder is going from being the melody to being a little recorder ensemble. There's the final bit of the melody and some harmony. And instead, the lute will carry the melody. Now, a little production feature that I have added is that I've added a classical acoustic guitar. Again, not super era appropriate. The classical era hasn't occurred in our medieval scenario, but the classical acoustic guitar just had a slightly different timbre. And I thought when the lute had the lead, it just sounded a little bit thin for the arrangement. So I added the acoustic guitar just to give it a little bit of a boost. A tiny bit of phasing because the timbres are so similar, but not a big deal. And when we hear it in the mix, quite effective, I think. Okay, so that goes through A with the ensemble roles switched. And I think that just is enough to retain some interest for the listener. We've heard rubato A, in time B section, in time A section. Now we're going to remain in time, but let's swap the roles. We'll take the percussion out. We will give harmony to the recorder. We'll play the lute as the melody, and it sounds great. Now, of course, as I was recording this, I realized, as I said before, this sounds a lot like Stairway to Heaven now, the recorder harmonies. So I thought, let's commit to this. Now, what I've decided to do is only bring the Led Zeppelin band in the lead up to the B section. And the way that that's been done is in a few ways. We start with the kind of classic floor tom and snare drum build-up. Very simple, but very effective. And we have a bass pedal down low. So we have, where's the bass here? 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 1, 2, and those things together, if I put the bass and the drums together, they work quite well as a build-up. So those two together kind of work quite effectively. Now, how the rest of the Led Zeppelin part works is we actually have a few guitar parts. Now, these are actually MIDI guitar parts. So these are not real guitars, but I'm still trying to replicate my strumming style. So I've used the room guitar, and there are a few tone settings that we will look at in a second. But we've got a guitar amp. Oh, that's just a pre-setting, but I've got a second amp that's going here. Those are some of my settings for those that are interested, and it sounds like this. Pretty intense sounding. If we put that with the, then we've got some, we've got some lead parts. We've got this lead here playing the melody. That is doubled by this lead. So those bends are starting to break up quite nicely. And then we get a third lead. And you might notice that this one has actually, these are literally copy pastes of each other, but this one has been tuned down 1 octave just to give it a little bit of more richness. The final element that is added is an organ part. So a lot of the bands from this era use organ. And there's just one technique that I want you to spot, which if we zoom in, you can see there are organ slides here. All that is I'm running my hand along the keys just in the lead up to when I hit the notes to give it a bit of a swell. Kind of a classic sound, and this is when the band really kicks in here, and the slide is just before that happens, so it's kind of exciting. And here it comes. Okay, I just want to draw attention to this little scale run. So a little bit of a Jimmy Page-ism on the guitar. Here's the actual score. Okay, so we've got this scale here. So what we've got here is essentially, because we're in E minor, this is the 5th mode of the harmonic minor. Pretty classic sort of sound. So this is this scale, the 5th mode of the harmonic minor, is run all the way up, and then there's one chromatic passing note added at the end. Well, this is technically the chromatic note here. And the whole point of this extra note is to make sure that we land on the melody on beat 1. So if I just solo those guitar parts here. So that scale run is a really lovely addition to this kind of genre, and all I'm doing is running essentially we're in E, and I'm playing the E harmonic minor, but starting on the 5th note. So this makes it the 5th mode of the harmonic minor, and it's a great sort of sound to play over a B chord. Gives it sort of the flat 9, the flat 13. A nice sound to use. The final thing of this section is a reverse cymbal, pretty classic sound. This is a crash cymbal sample. We'll have a listen to what it sounds like usually, if it will let me do this. Don't think it will. Oh, there we go. So currently this is in reverse. If you look at this sound wave over here, a crash cymbal should have the crash at the start, as you would expect. So you would hear this. That's just what a crash cymbal sounds like. If we hit reverse, it puts the crash in reverse, which means it will sound like a crash cymbal swell. You get that cool little bit of reverb hanging over the edge. And that's in the mix as well, so that when we transition back to the medieval era, we have this kind of build and then a sudden takeaway of this kind of excitement, and that the sudden absence of all these instruments is what makes the next section exciting. Here comes our swell. It's a little detail, but it really does make the difference. And this kind of reverse cymbal, this is used in all sorts of genres, not just rock, but it's very popular in dance music as well, techno music and EDM and all of that kind of stuff. The reverse cymbal is a classic and always available to use. The only thing you'll notice that it's a different color. That's because this is an audio sample. This is not MIDI information. And because it's an audio sample, it can't be edited the way that we can edit MIDI, but it can be treated in different ways. It can be reversed, for example. You can't reverse MIDI, but you can reverse an audio sample. And the way that GarageBand tells you that you're using MIDI is that these blocks are green and audio tends to be blue, although I think you can change all of this. So, cool. We then finally return to the medieval era. And everything is essentially the same. We've got a slight bit of rubato, then we've got time, and then we end with a little floor tom. We don't even have to listen to that. The only thing I'd like to note is that I have dropped the tempo here. So the tempo, when this tempo here is the same tempo as here. And when we return, we actually drop a little bit over 10 beats a minute. And what I've done is I've just done this to give this the feeling that the piece is drawing to a close. I hope that you notice that as we transition from the Led Zeppelin section back into the medieval, there is a tempo drop, and that does serve to sort of tell us that the journey is coming to a close. So a subtle little thing, but I think it does actually help illustrate to the listener or give a clue to the listener about kind of what's happening in the rest of the music. All right, that'll do it, I think. Thank you for watching. I hope you've taken something from it, and I hope you have a lot of fun creating your own version of Boris the Pirate. Thank you.